Is the Kremlin going into full cope mode as more and more people find out about the reality of the Kremlin's shootdown of a civilian airliner? More importantly, why is the Kremlin backtracking on even their own statements? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about this and more of the crazy details we've learned about the Azerbaijani airliner downing. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is just classic Kremlin nonsense here. They've pivoted, in fact, from saying that it was totally a bird strike to now Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says, quote, it would be incorrect to make any hypotheses before the investigation comes to conclusions, and we definitely cannot do it, and no one should do it, he said in his daily press conference. Right now, this is interesting because, again, the Kazakh deputy prime minister is saying, quote, the police and prosecutor's office are conducting forensic examinations. Therefore, at this point, it is premature to talk about anything. This is pure hype. It is not pure hype, guys. I'm here to tell you that there is only really one explanation that makes sense given all the data that we've seen, and that is, of course, that some form of Russian air defense disabled the aircraft. We talked about this in an earlier video, but we're going to talk about why I think this is so significant and why the Kremlin is in damage control mode. But first, I want to make two quick shout outs. The first of which is on Strike Gum. We're running our holiday sale until the 1st, 20% off site wide and free shipping on 2 or more 5-packs. And also, if you want to buy a Christmas present for the Ukrainian units, particularly those units that helped me out during my trip to Ukraine, you can do so over on donorbox.org/CVRFriends. The link is in the description. Right, give those guys the gift that keeps on giving, namely an FPV drone or two. Again, every dollar helps, but if you can afford about $200, which is around the cost of an FPV drone, they'll hook you up with some patches. And again, it's a 501c3 here in the United States. So if you're looking for those donations for tax write-off purposes, you can do it. Anyway, here's what I want to mention. First off, as of yesterday, of course, the Russians were saying, Russia's Civil Aviation Authority was saying that, quote, preliminary information indicates that the pilots diverted to Aktau after a bird strike led to an emergency on board. But man, it must have been a heck of a bird strike because many of the passengers actually reported that shrapnel had penetrated into the cabin, which means that, of course, it must have been one of those small metallic birds that we keep hearing so much about. But also, more troublingly, that the flight was near Grozny when it had to make its diversion. In fact, more information has come out revealing that Flight 24, the flight tracking app, showed the plane actually make it to near Grozny Airport, and then it obviously vanished from radar as it made its descent below radar altitude, and then suddenly reappeared on radar, bolting for Kazakh airspace. Now, if you had a bird strike, why would they not land at Grozny, the airport immediately in front of them? Why would they travel hundreds of additional kilometers to another country's airspace? And of course, that's because more reports have not narrowed in on what happened. There's reports that Russian air defenses include GPS jamming and radio jamming. So as the plane approached Grozny, it couldn't talk to the air traffic control towers. Therefore, when the air traffic control tower tried to determine who was behind the stick of that flight, the answer was they couldn't. Because, again, their communications had been disabled by the Russians. Now, you may think, how could Russia have not thought this through? The answer is, again, because they're a dictatorship run by Kadyrov, who's a fucking idiot. And this is a natural consequence of when you give a complete buffoon absolute power over your country. Okay? So, once they were unable to raise anyone from the cockpit of the flight, Russian air defenses, what's identified as a Pantsir S system specifically, was cleared to engage, believing the civilian airliner to be a much larger than usual Ukrainian drone. Now, this actually isn't crazy because just a few days ago, a Ukrainian drone, which was actually indeed a retrofitted single-engine aircraft, did appear to strike a police headquarters in Grozny. So the threat was real, and in classic Russian fashion, they overcompensated and ended up sparking an international incident, right? And this is sort of the problem that they run into, is that now Russia has involved another third party of countries, right? You see Azerbaijan, who it's their national airline, and the plane had dozens and dozens of the dead are Azerbaijanis. And so this is obviously a huge problem for Azerbaijan, whose public is now pretty outraged by the fact that Russia killed all their countrymen, particularly in such a way that is unbelievably reckless. But not only that, but after having struck the plane, again, it appears that the plane was able to continue to fly, right, not receiving critical damage, but the plane was able to fly, but had to fly literally hundreds of additional miles to make it to Aktau Airport, where it could land safely, simply because, again, likely because they had no communications with air traffic control in Grozny. So this is just absolutely classic Russian fuck-ups, just willing to give no shits about the rest of the international community, about international norms. They're just simply insanely committed to protecting themselves from the threat of scary Ukrainian drones, right? And again, this is just a sign that more and more you're seeing a Russia that is looking increasingly desperate and paranoid around the threat of Ukrainian attacks, right? This is something where, again, Russia's official position is that they are winning in Ukraine. It's not even really a war, and the Ukrainians are eager to have the Russians take over their country. So it's kind of weird that, again, all of your civilian airports need to have GPS and communication jammers, as well as air defense systems for that war you're totally 1,000,000% winning. Anyway, guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That makes a difference. And thanks to folks like James Gerling, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, Alan Knudsen, Bastian Himling, Brian Kelly, Del McCombs, James Olin, Henry Roos here, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. I could not do it without you guys. I appreciate you so much, and I will see each and every one of you guys in the next one. Cheers.